The cards hit the wooden table with sharp snaps that made Ryder Zimmerman flinch. Though whether from the sound or the increasingly concerned looks his friends were giving him, he couldn't say. He hadn't wanted to play this game, had tried 3 times to excuse himself from the tavern table, but Marcus had grabbed his arm and practically shoved him into the chair with that grin that meant trouble was coming. "Come on, Rye, one hand," Marcus had said, already dealing. "What's the worst that could happen?" Now Ryder knew exactly what the worst was, and it was staring at him from across the table with eyes the color of amber and skin the deep green of summer moss. The orc woman sat perfectly still, her muscular arms crossed over her chest, her expression unreadable except for the slight flare of her nostrils every time she exhaled. She wore practical traveling clothes, leather vest over a worn linen shirt, and her dark hair was pulled back in a thick braid that fell over one broad shoulder. Small tusks jutted from her lower jaw, not aggressive or monstrous like the stories told, just there, part of her face like any other feature. "Well, Zimmerman," said the merchant who had dealt the hand, a greasy man named Pollux who ran caravans through the frontier territories. "Looks like you won yourself a companion. Congratulations." Ryder stared at his cards, still spread on the table, 3 kings and 2 queens. He had won. He absolutely, definitely had won, and he wished with every fiber of his being that he had lost instead. "I didn't know we were playing for people," Ryder said, his voice coming out strained. "I thought this was just a friendly game." Pollux laughed, the sound like gravel in a bucket. "Friendly? Boy, nothing in the borderlands is friendly. I won her fair and square from an orc clan up north, payment for goods rendered. She's mine to do with as I please, and I please to wager her. You won, she's yours. That's how it works." "I don't want," Ryder started, but the orc woman moved suddenly, rising from her chair with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for someone of her size. She stood at least 6 feet tall, maybe more, with shoulders that spoke of hard labor and harder living. She walked around the table and stopped beside Ryder's chair, looking down at him with those amber eyes. "You are stuck with me now," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, with an accent that made the common tongue sound like music. "I am Karga. I was property to that man. Now I am property to you. This is how it is." The words hit Ryder like a punch to the stomach. Property. The very concept made his skin crawl. He stood up quickly, his chair scraping against the floor, and found himself at eye level with her collarbone. Up close, he could see faint scars on her neck and arms, the kind that came from chains or ropes, and his stomach turned over. "No," he said firmly. "That's not how it is. That's not how anything is. I don't own people. I won't own people." Pollux laughed again. "Noble sentiments, farm boy, but the law's the law. She was legally wagered, you legally won. You walk out of here without taking her, she goes back to being mine, and trust me, you don't want that. I've got buyers lined up who would pay good money for a strong orc woman. Hard labor, dangerous work, you understand." Karga's expression didn't change, but Ryder saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or resignation. It made his decision for him. "Fine," he said. "Fine. She comes with me, but not as property, as a person. You understand me?" He directed the last part to Karga, who tilted her head slightly, studying him with an intensity that made him want to look away. He didn't, though. He held her gaze until she nodded once, a small movement. "I understand," she said. "You are strange for a human." "Yeah, well," Ryder muttered, gathering his few coins from the table and shoving them in his pocket. "I've been called worse." He walked out of the tavern without looking back, assuming Karga would follow. The cool evening air hit his face as he stepped into the street, and he took a deep breath, trying to calm the racing of his heart. What had he just done? He was a farmer, barely scraping by on the small homestead he had inherited from his father 3 years ago. He could hardly feed himself some months, let alone another person. And not just any person, but an orc woman who would face prejudice and suspicion from every human neighbor within 50 miles. Footsteps behind him, heavy but controlled. Karga appeared at his side, carrying a small pack he hadn't noticed before. Of course she had belongings. Of course she was real, a real person with possessions and a life that had led her to this moment. "Where do we go?" she asked. "My farm," Ryder said, starting to walk. "About 5 miles west of here. We should get moving before it gets full dark." They walked in silence for a while, leaving the small trading post town behind. The road was dirt and gravel, worn smooth by wagon wheels and foot traffic. Spring was settling into the borderlands with the gentle insistence of new growth, wildflowers dotting the roadside and fresh leaves uncurling on the trees. Ryder kept stealing glances at Karga, trying to reconcile the stories he had grown up with and the reality walking beside him. Orcs were supposed to be savage, brutal, barely more than beasts. But Karga moved like a warrior, controlled and aware, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. And she had spoken with perfect clarity, even if her words had been strange. "You said you don't own people," Karga said suddenly, breaking the silence. "But you took me anyway." "Why?" Ryder considered his answer carefully. "Because Pollux was going to sell you to someone who would work you to death. Because slavery is wrong, no matter what the law says in the borderlands. And because I figured once we got to my farm, we could figure out what you actually want to do." Karga was quiet for a long moment. "What I want to do," she repeated slowly, as if testing the words. "No one has asked me that before." "Well, I'm asking." "I do not know," she admitted. "I have been property for 2 years. Before that, I was cast out from my clan for refusing to raid a human settlement. They said I was weak, that I had no honor. Maybe they were right." Ryder felt anger kindle in his chest, not at Karga but at everything that had brought her to this point. "They were wrong," he said firmly. "Takes more strength to stand up for what you believe in than to follow orders you know are wrong. My father taught me that. Your father sounds wise." "He was. He died 3 years ago. Fever took him during a bad winter." "I am sorry," Karga said, and she sounded like she meant it. "My mother died when I was young. Raiders. Human raiders." The words hung between them, a shared grief that somehow made the darkness feel less isolating. Ryder found himself relaxing slightly, his shoulders dropping from their tense hunch. "I'm sorry too," he said, "for what it's worth." "It is worth something," Karga replied. They walked the rest of the way in companionable silence. And by the time Ryder's farm came into view, the moon was rising over the eastern hills. The homestead was small but well-maintained. A single-room cabin with a stone chimney, a barn that housed his 2 horses and handful of chickens, and fields that stretched out in neat rows where he had planted wheat and vegetables. It wasn't much, but it was his, paid for with his father's life and his own sweat. "Home," Ryder said, gesturing at the cabin. "Like I said, it's not much." Karga looked around with those sharp amber eyes, taking in every detail. "It is more than I expected," she said. "It is more than I have had in a long time." Something about the way she said it made Ryder's chest tighten. He cleared his throat and headed for the cabin door, fishing the key from his pocket. "Come on, I'll show you inside. You must be hungry." The cabin was dark and cool, and Ryder lit the oil lamp that hung by the door, casting warm light across the simple interior. One main room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room, with a loft above that held his sleeping space. A fireplace dominated one wall, and shelves lined another, holding supplies and a few precious books. It was clean, at least. Ryder took pride in keeping things orderly, even when he was exhausted from field work. Karga set her pack down carefully by the door and stood in the center of the room, looking uncertain for the first time since he had met her. "Where do I sleep?" she asked. Ryder hadn't thought that far ahead. "The loft is mine," he said slowly, "but I can set up a bedroll down here by the fire. It'll be warm and comfortable enough." "I can sleep in the barn," Karga offered. "I have done so before. It is no hardship." "No," Ryder said firmly. "You're not sleeping in the barn like an animal. You'll take the bedroll and that's final." Karga studied him with that intense gaze again, and Ryder wondered what she was looking for, what she saw when she looked at him. A fool, probably. A naive farm boy who didn't understand the realities of the world. "Thank you," she said finally. "You are kind." "Just trying to be decent," Ryder muttered, feeling his face heat. He turned to the small stove. "I've got some stew left from yesterday. It's not fancy, but it's filling." While he heated the food, Karga explored the cabin with careful curiosity, her fingers trailing over the spines of his books, the rough wood of the table, the simple dishes on the shelves. She moved like someone memorizing a place, committing every detail to memory in case it disappeared. They ate in silence, sitting across from each other at the small table. The stew was simple, just vegetables and a bit of preserved meat, but Karga ate with the focused intensity of someone who had gone hungry too often. Ryder found himself watching her, noticing details. The way her tusks caught the lamplight, the small pointed tips of her ears that peeked through her dark hair, the way her hands, though large and scarred, handled the spoon with surprising delicacy. "Tell me about farming," Karga said suddenly, setting down her empty bowl. "I know nothing about it." "It's hard work," Ryder said with a slight smile. "You plant seeds in the spring, tend them through the summer, harvest in the fall, and hope you grew enough to make it through winter. In between, you fix things that break, feed animals, and pray the weather cooperates. That is all. That's the basics. The reality is a lot more complicated. You've got to understand soil and rotation, when to water and when to let things dry, how to deal with pests and diseases. My father spent 20 years teaching me, and I'm still learning." Karga leaned forward slightly. "Will you teach me?" The question caught Ryder off guard. "You want to learn farming?" "I want to be useful," Karga said. "If I am to stay here, I should help. And you said I could decide what I want to do. I want to learn." Something warm unfurled in Ryder's chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. "Then I'll teach you," he said. "Fair warning, though, it's hard work and spring is the busiest time." "I am strong," Karga said simply. "I do not fear hard work." Over the following days, Ryder learned that Karga had not been exaggerating. She was strong, stronger than any person he had ever met, able to lift loads that would have taken him 2 trips in a single one. But more than that, she was smart and attentive, watching everything he did with focused intensity and asking questions that showed she was truly thinking about the work. He started her on simple tasks, hauling water from the well for the vegetable garden, mucking out the barn, a job he hated and was happy to share, feeding the chickens and collecting eggs, which seemed to amuse her in a way he couldn't quite understand. She went about each task with the same serious dedication, never complaining even when the work was dirty or tedious. In the evenings, they would sit at the small table and he would tell her about the farm, about crop rotation and companion planting, about the way you could tell good soil from bad by its smell and texture. She listened with rapt attention, sometimes asking him to repeat things so she could remember them better. "Why do you plant the beans next to the corn?" she asked one night, tracing the simple diagram he had drawn in the dust on the table. "Beans put nutrients back into the soil that corn takes out," Ryder explained, "and the corn stalks give the beans something to climb. They help each other grow." Karga was quiet for a moment, studying the drawing. Like partnership, she said softly. Yeah, Ryder agreed. Like partnership. Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them that Ryder couldn't name. He looked away first, his heart doing strange things in his chest. By the second week, Karga was working beside him in the fields, helping him plant the late spring crops. She learned quickly, her strong hands making short work of digging and planting. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side in companionable silence broken only by occasional questions or instructions. The problem was the neighbors. Ryder's nearest neighbor, a man named Thomas Garrett who farmed the land to the east, stopped by on a bright morning when Karga was working in the vegetable garden behind the house. Thomas took one look at her, and his face went hard. "Zimmerman," he said, his voice tight. "What in the name of all that's holy is that doing on your land?" Ryder felt anger flash through him, but he kept his voice level. "Her name is Karga, and she's helping me with the farm." "That's an orc, boy, an orc. You know what they are, killers and raiders. They murdered 6 families up north last year." "Karga isn't a raider," Ryder said firmly. "She was cast out of her clan for refusing to raid humans. She's been through enough without people judging her for what she is instead of who she is." Thomas spat in the dirt. "You're a fool, Zimmerman. Mark my words, she'll slit your throat in your sleep and steal everything you own. That's what orcs do." "Then I guess I'll die proven wrong," Ryder said, his voice hard now. "Was there something you actually needed, Thomas, or did you just come to insult my friend?" Thomas's face went red. "Friend? You're calling that thing your friend?" He shook his head. "Your father would be ashamed." "My father taught me to judge people by their actions, not their blood," Ryder shot back. "Seems like a lesson you could stand to learn." Thomas left without another word, riding off in a cloud of dust. Ryder stood there for a long moment, his hands clenched into fists, trying to calm the rage that burned in his chest. When he finally turned around, he found Karga standing at the corner of the house, her face carefully blank. "I heard," she said quietly. "I'm sorry," Ryder said. "Thomas is an ass, always has been." "He is not wrong, though," Karga said, her voice steady despite the pain Ryder could see in her eyes. "I am an orc. Your people fear and hate my people. I bring you trouble by being here." "Karga, maybe I should leave," she continued, not meeting his eyes. "Go somewhere else. Somewhere where I will not make problems for you." "No," Ryder said, the word coming out harder than he intended. He crossed to where she stood and waited until she looked at him. "You're not leaving. I don't care what Thomas or anyone else thinks. You've worked hard, you've been nothing but helpful and kind, and this is your home now if you want it to be. Do you understand me?" Karga searched his face, and Ryder saw something shift in her expression, something soften. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you care?" It was a fair question, and Ryder found himself struggling for an answer that made sense. The truth was complicated, tangled up in loneliness and grief and something else he wasn't ready to name. But he tried. "Because you deserve better than what you've been given," he said finally. "Because you've earned a place to belong, and because I like having you here. The farm feels less empty with you in it." Karga's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment Ryder thought she might cry, but she didn't. Instead, she nodded once, firm and decisive. "Then I will stay," she said, "and I will work hard to be worthy of your kindness." "You already are," Ryder told her, and meant it. As spring deepened into early summer, they fell into a routine that felt comfortable, almost natural. Ryder taught Karga everything he knew about farming, and she proved to be an excellent student. She learned to read the weather by the clouds and wind, to tell when plants needed water or were getting too much, to identify pests and diseases before they could spread. She had a natural understanding of the work, an intuition that surprised him. But it wasn't just the work that changed. They began to talk more, sharing stories from their pasts. Karga told him about growing up in an orc clan, about the rigid hierarchy and constant testing of strength, about her mother who had been a skilled hunter and her father who had died in a clan war before she was born. She told him about the day she had refused to follow orders, standing alone against her clan leader and accepting exile rather than participating in a raid on a human village with children in it. "I could not do it," she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set. "I could not kill those children. They were innocent. My clan leader said I was weak, that mercy was a human disease, but I think mercy is strength, not weakness." "I think so too," Ryder said softly. "And I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met." Karga looked at him with those amber eyes, and Ryder felt his breath catch. In the golden light of sunset, she was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. Not beautiful like the girls he had grown up with in the village, but beautiful in her own fierce, unique way. Strong and honest and real. He looked away, suddenly aware of how his heart was pounding. In turn, Ryder told Karga about his own past. About growing up on the farm, learning from his father, dreaming of adventure but never quite brave enough to leave. About his mother who had died when he was young, too young to remember her face clearly. About the loneliness that had settled over him after his father's death, the weight of working the farm alone, the nights when he wondered if this was all his life would ever be. "I thought I would have a family by now," he admitted one night. "A wife, children, but the girls in the village, they all wanted someone more exciting, someone who would take them away from here, not keep them on a farm in the middle of nowhere." "Their loss," Karga said firmly. "You are a good man, Ryder Zimmerman, kind and patient and honest. Any woman would be fortunate to have you." The way she said it with such conviction made Ryder's face heat. "Thanks," he muttered, not trusting himself to say more, but the truth was becoming harder to ignore. He was growing to care for Karga in ways that went beyond friendship, beyond gratitude for her help on the farm. He found himself watching her when she worked, admiring the fluid strength of her movements. He looked forward to their evening conversations with an eagerness that felt dangerous. He lay awake at night in the loft, listening to her breathing by the fire below, and wondered what it would be like to hold her, to kiss her, to tell her everything he was feeling. But he said nothing. How could he? She was still finding her place in the world after years of slavery and exile. The last thing she needed was him complicating things with feelings she might not share. And even if she did share them, what kind of life could they have together? A human and an orc, in a world that would hate them for loving each other. So he kept his feelings locked away and focused on the work, on teaching Karga everything he knew and trying not to notice how his heart lifted every time she smiled at him. It was Karga who broke the careful peace they had built. They were working in the wheat field one hot afternoon, Ryder checking the growing stalks for signs of rust disease while Karga weeded between the rows. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Ryder had stripped off his shirt an hour ago, working in just his trousers. He had forgotten about it until he stood up to move to the next section and found Karga staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. "What?" he asked, suddenly self-conscious. Karga looked away quickly. "Nothing, you have scars on your back." "Oh." Ryder reached back reflexively, touching the raised lines he knew were there. "From when I was a kid. I got caught in a barn fire trying to save the horses. Got them out, but the burning beam fell on me. My father pulled me free." "You were brave," Karga said softly. "I was stupid," Ryder corrected with a slight smile. "But the horses lived, so I guess it worked out." Karga stood up, brushing dirt from her knees, and walked over to where he stood. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and traced one of the scars with her finger. Her touch was gentle, almost reverent, and Ryder felt goosebumps rise on his skin despite the heat. "You carry your courage on your skin," she said quietly. "I carry mine here." She touched her chest over her heart. "From when they beat me for refusing to raid, they wanted me to know shame. But I felt only resolve." Ryder turned to face her fully and realized how close they were standing. Close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her amber eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body. His heart hammered against his ribs. "Karga," he said, his voice coming out rough. "I need to tell you something." She tilted her head, waiting, her expression open and trusting in a way that made his chest tight. But before he could speak, a shout came from the direction of the road. They both turned to see a group of riders approaching, 5 men on horseback, and Ryder's stomach dropped when he recognized Pollux at the lead. "Zimmerman," the merchant called out. "Got a word to have with you." Ryder quickly pulled his shirt back on and walked to meet them, Karga at his side. Pollux dismounted with a grin that made Ryder's skin crawl. "Been hearing interesting stories," Pollux said, his eyes sliding to Karga. "About how you're keeping an orc on your land. Now, I'm a businessman, and I can't help but think that's property going to waste. I've got a buyer willing to pay good coin for her, triple what she was worth in that card game." "She's not for sale," Ryder said flatly. "Everything's for sale, boy. I'm offering you a chance to profit from a situation that's just going to cause you trouble. Your neighbors are already talking. How long before they decide an orc this close to their families is too much of a risk? How long before they come with torches and pitchforks? That's their problem, not mine." Pollux's smile faded. "You're making a mistake, Zimmerman, a big one. That thing isn't worth the trouble it's going to bring you." "Her name is Karga," Ryder said, his voice hard as stone, "and she's staying. Now get off my land before I make you leave." One of the other men laughed. "You and what army, farm boy?" Ryder's hand moved to the knife at his belt, but before he could draw it, Karga stepped forward. She didn't say anything, didn't make any threatening moves, but something about the way she positioned herself, the absolute stillness of her body, made the men step back involuntarily. "He does not need an army," Karga said quietly. "He has me." The threat in her words was clear, and Pollux's face went red, but after a long moment he remounted his horse. "This isn't over," he said. "Mark my words, Zimmerman, you're going to regret this." They rode off, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Ryder stood there, his heart pounding with adrenaline, his hands shaking slightly. Karga's hand on his shoulder, warm and solid, grounded him. "Thank you," he said, turning to face her, "for standing with me." "Always," Karga said simply. "You gave me a home when I had none. You treated me with kindness when the world had shown me only cruelty. I will stand with you against anything." The intensity in her eyes, the conviction in her voice, made something inside Ryder crack open. All the feelings he had been holding back came rushing forward, too strong to contain. "Karga," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What I was going to say before. What I need to tell you is that I think I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I already have fallen. I know it's complicated. I know the world won't understand, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing before I sleep. And the idea of you leaving, of not having you in my life, it terrifies me more than anything Pollux or the neighbors could do." Karga stared at him, her expression unreadable, and for a horrible moment Ryder thought he had made a terrible mistake. But then her face softened into something that looked like wonder. "You love me?" she asked, as if testing the words. "You, a human, love me, an orc?" "Yes," Ryder said firmly. "I know I should probably be more careful, should think about this more, but yes, I love you." Karga reached up and cupped his face in her large, calloused hands, tilting his head back so she could look directly into his eyes. "I love you too," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I did not know I could feel this way, did not know my heart could hold so much. But I love you, Ryder Zimmerman. You have given me more than a home. You have given me hope." Ryder felt tears prick at his eyes, and he didn't bother to hold them back. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. In answer, Karga leaned down and pressed her lips to his. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if they were both afraid of breaking something precious. But then Ryder's hands came up to her waist, and Karga's arms wrapped around him, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like a promise, like a beginning. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ryder rested his forehead against Karga's collarbone and laughed, the sound almost giddy with relief and joy. "What?" Karga asked, amusement in her voice. "I just realized," Ryder said, looking up at her with a grin. "I won you in a card game I didn't want to play, and you turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me." Karga smiled, really smiled, and Ryder felt his heart skip. "You are stuck with me now," she said, echoing her words from that first night. But this time they sounded like joy instead of resignation. "Good," Ryder said, pulling her close. "I wouldn't want it any other way." But their happiness was short-lived. 3 days later, Ryder was working on repairing the barn roof when he saw smoke rising from the direction of Thomas Garrett's farm. He climbed down immediately, his stomach tight with dread, and found Karga already staring at the horizon, her face grim. "Something is wrong," she said. "I have to go check," Ryder said, already moving toward the horses. "Thomas is an ass, but I can't just leave him if something's happened." "I am coming with you," Karga said, in a tone that brooked no argument. They rode hard toward Thomas's farm, and what they found made Ryder's blood run cold. The barn was on fire, flames licking high into the sky, and Thomas was on the ground, clutching his leg and shouting. His wife Sarah was trying to drag him away from the blaze, her face streaked with soot and tears. Ryder dismounted and ran to help, grabbing Thomas under the arms while Sarah got his legs. They managed to drag him a safe distance from the fire before Ryder looked up and saw the real problem. "Where are your children?" he asked urgently. Sarah's face went white. "Emma went to the village this morning, but Jacob was playing in the loft. Oh God, he's still inside." Without thinking, Ryder turned and ran toward the burning barn. He heard Karga shout his name, heard Thomas yelling something, but the words didn't register. All he could think about was the 8-year-old boy trapped in that inferno. The heat hit him like a wall as he reached the barn door. Smoke poured out, thick and black, choking. Ryder pulled his shirt up over his nose and mouth and plunged inside, squinting against the stinging smoke. The structure groaned around him, wood cracking and popping as the fire consumed it. "Jacob," he shouted. "Jacob, where are you?" A small, terrified voice came from somewhere above. "Help, I'm scared." Ryder looked up and saw the boy huddled in the loft, surrounded by flames. The ladder was already consumed by fire, no way up and no way down. Ryder looked around desperately, trying to find something, anything he could use. His eyes landed on a coil of rope hanging on the wall, not yet touched by the flames. He grabbed it and was about to try throwing it up to the loft when strong hands gripped his shoulders and moved him aside. Karga, her face set with determination, took the rope from his hands. "I am stronger," she said simply. "I will climb." Before Ryder could protest, she tied one end of the rope around her waist and threw the other end to him. "When I reach the boy, you pull us both down. Understand?" Ryder nodded, wrapping the rope around his hands, and watched in awe as Karga began to climb the barn wall. She used the support beams and cross braces like ladder rungs. her powerful arms pulling her weight with ease even as the fire roared around her. She reached the loft in seconds, gathered the crying boy into her arms, and began the climb back down. But halfway down, a beam gave way with a crack like thunder. Karga twisted her body, taking the blow across her back to protect Jacob, and lost her grip. They fell, and Ryder's heart stopped. He lunged forward, the rope burning his hands as he tried to slow their descent. They hit the ground hard but alive, and Ryder was there instantly, helping Karga to her feet, taking Jacob from her arms. "Go!" Karga shouted, pushing him toward the door. Now they ran, Ryder clutching Jacob, Karga right behind him. They burst out of the barn just as a section of the roof collapsed inward with a roar of flame and smoke. Ryder didn't stop running until they were well clear, until he could hand Jacob to his sobbing mother and turn to check on Karga. She was on her hands and knees, coughing hard, her back scorched and bleeding where the beam had struck her. Ryder dropped beside her, his hands hovering uselessly, not sure where he could touch without causing her pain. "Karga, God, are you all right?" She looked up at him, her face streaked with soot, and managed a weak smile. "I am alive. The boy is alive. That is what matters." Sarah Garrett appeared at Ryder's side, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Karga with an expression of pure gratitude and something that might have been shame. "You saved my son," she whispered. "An orc saved my son." "I am Karga," Karga said, still breathing hard. "And I did only what anyone should do. Children should be protected, always." Thomas limped over, supported by Ryder, and stared at Karga for a long moment. His face was difficult to read, a complicated mix of emotions passing across it. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough. "I was wrong about you," he said. "Dead wrong. You risked your life for my boy. I don't have words for what that means, but I'm sorry for the things I said, for the way I judged you. I was wrong." Karga nodded slowly. "Apology accepted," she said, "but not needed. I did not save Jacob for thanks or apology. I saved him because he is a child and children deserve to live." Sarah knelt beside Karga, gently examining her injuries. "These need tending," she said firmly. "Come back to the house. Please, let me help you." Over the next few hours, Sarah cleaned and bandaged Karga's burns with gentle efficiency while Ryder stayed close, holding Karga's hand when the pain made her grit her teeth. Thomas sat with Jacob, who kept asking to see the brave orc lady who saved him, his earlier prejudices seeming to have vanished in the face of his son's hero worship. When they finally left, heading back to their own farm in the late afternoon sun, Ryder helped Karga onto her horse, worried about her injuries. But she sat tall despite the pain, her face peaceful. "That was very brave," Ryder said as they rode, "and very stupid. You could have died." "So could you," Karga pointed out. "You ran into that fire first, to save a child. As did I. We are the same in this, you and I. We do what must be done, even when it is dangerous." Ryder reached over and took her hand, twining his fingers with hers. "We're going to be all right," he said. "You know that, right? What you did today, people are going to hear about it. Thomas and Sarah will tell the story. Maybe things will start to change." "Maybe," Karga said, though she sounded doubtful. "But even if they do not, I have you. That is enough." As if to prove Ryder's point, the change began almost immediately. Over the next few weeks, as word spread about Karga's heroic rescue of Jacob Garrett, people's attitudes began to shift. Not everyone's and not completely, but enough to make a difference. Neighbors who had avoided Ryder's farm started stopping by, tentatively at first, to meet the orc woman who had risked her life for a human child. Some came out of curiosity, some out of shame for their earlier prejudice, but they came. An older woman named Margaret Davies, who ran a small shop in the trading post town, brought a basket of fresh bread and preserves as a thank you gift, even though Jacob wasn't her grandson. "Any being willing to save a child deserves respect," she said firmly, looking Karga in the eye. "Orc or human or anything else, you're welcome in my shop anytime." Even some of the younger men in the area, the ones who had always treated Ryder with a bit of condescension for being just a farmer, started showing him more respect. He and Karga had proven something that day, something about courage and character that transcended species. But not everyone was pleased with the change in sentiment. Pollux, in particular, seemed to take it as a personal affront. He showed up at the farm one evening with a group of rough-looking men, his face ugly with anger. "You've made a fool of me, Zimmerman," he snarled. "Got the whole region talking about how noble and brave your pet orc is. Cost me business. People don't want to trade with a man who dealt in orc slaves, turns out." "That's not my problem," Ryder said, standing on his porch with his arms crossed. Karga was inside, resting. Her burns were healing well, but she still tired easily. "Oh, but it is," Pollux said. "See, I figure I'm owed. You took property that was rightfully mine when you won that game, and now you've cost me my reputation. I'm here to collect payment." "The game was legal," Ryder said. "You can't come back and demand more just because you're upset." "I can do whatever I want," Pollux said, and gestured to his men. "And there's more of us than there are of you." The men started to advance, and Ryder's hand went to his belt, to the knife there. He knew he couldn't take 5 men, not alone, but he would die before he let them take Karga or destroy what they had built together. But before the fight could begin, the door behind Ryder opened and Karga stepped out. She moved slowly, still healing, but when she drew herself up to her full height, the men stopped in their tracks. Even injured, she was intimidating. "You want payment," Karga said, her voice cold. "Then you will have to go through me. And I promise you, merchant, I am not easy prey. I may be healing, but I am still orc, still a warrior." "Do you truly wish to test me?" One of Pollux's men, a scarred fellow with a cruel face, laughed. "It's injured, we can take it." "Try," Karga said simply. The man made the mistake of rushing forward, and Karga moved with speed that belied her injuries. She caught his arm, twisted, and sent him sprawling into the dirt with a pained yelp. The others hesitated, suddenly less confident. "Anyone else?" Karga asked, breathing hard but standing firm. "This isn't over," Pollux spat, backing toward his horse. "You hear me? I'll see you both ruined for this." "Get off my land," Ryder said, his voice hard. "And don't come back." They left, but Ryder knew the threat was real. Pollux was a vengeful man, and he had connections throughout the borderlands. They would have to be careful. That night, as Karga sat by the fire wincing while Ryder changed her bandages, he voiced his concerns. "He's not going to let this go," Ryder said quietly. "Pollux. He'll find some way to cause trouble." "Let him try," Karga said. "I am not afraid of him." "I know you're not. But I am. Not for me, but for you. If something happened to you because of me, because I won that stupid card game, I couldn't live with myself." Karga caught his hand, stilling his movements. "Ryder, look at me." He met her amber eyes, saw the absolute certainty there. "Nothing is going to happen to me," she said firmly. "And nothing is going to happen to you. We are together now. We are stronger together than either of us could be alone. You understand this, yes?" Ryder nodded, not trusting his voice. "Good," Karga said, and pulled him down for a kiss that was gentle and fierce all at once. Over the following weeks, they worked together to secure the farm, preparing for potential trouble. Ryder reinforced the locks on the doors and windows, and Karga taught him basic self-defense, drawing on her training as an orc warrior. They practiced in the evenings after the day's work was done, and Ryder was surprised to find he enjoyed it. There was something about learning to move and fight alongside Karga that felt intimate, a different kind of partnership than their work in the fields. As summer deepened, the farm flourished under their combined efforts. The wheat grew tall and golden, the vegetable garden overflowed with produce, and the chickens laid more eggs than Ryder had ever managed on his own. They sold the surplus at the trading post, and for the first time in years, Ryder had money saved for the coming winter. But more than the material success, it was the emotional richness of his life that struck Ryder. He had been so lonely before Karga, so isolated in his grief and daily struggle. Now, every day was filled with her presence, her laughter, her quiet strength. They worked side by side, ate meals together, sat on the porch in the evenings watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. He loved her more with each passing day, loved the way she hummed while she worked, the way she was gentle with the animals, the way she looked at him like he was someone special. They kissed often now, stolen moments throughout the day and longer, deeper kisses in the privacy of the evening. Ryder wanted more, wanted everything, but he held back. Karga was still healing from her burns and he wouldn't push her. It was Karga who finally initiated more. One warm evening in late summer, after they had finished dinner and cleaned up, Karga took Ryder's hand and led him outside. The sky was brilliant with stars, the air sweet with the smell of growing things. She walked them out past the barn to the edge of the wheat field where the stalks rustled in the breeze. "I have been thinking," she said, still holding his hand, "about us, about what we are to each other." Ryder's heart started to pound. "What have you been thinking?" "That I want more," Karga said, turning to face him. "I want to be yours completely and I want you to be mine, in all ways." "Karga," Ryder breathed, pulling her close. "Are you sure?" "Your injuries are healed enough," she said firmly. "I am sure, Ryder. I have never been more sure of anything." They made love there in the wheat field under the stars, and it was awkward and perfect and overwhelming all at once. Ryder had been with a woman only once before, a clumsy encounter in his youth, but this was different. This was Karga, the woman he loved, and every touch felt sacred, every kiss a promise. They learned each other slowly, gently, with patience and growing confidence. And when they finally came together completely, Ryder felt something in his soul click into place, as if he had found a part of himself he hadn't known was missing. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the crushed wheat, Karga's head on Ryder's chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "In case I haven't said it enough, I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I love you too," Karga replied, her voice soft and content. "You are my home, Ryder Zimmerman, my heart, my everything." "Marry me," Ryder said suddenly, the words surprising him even as he spoke them. But as soon as they were out, he knew they were right. "I know we can't do it officially. I know no priest would perform the ceremony, but marry me anyway. Be my wife in truth, even if the world won't recognize it." Karga pushed herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with wide eyes. "You want to marry me, an orc?" "I want to marry you, Karga, the woman I love. The bravest, kindest, strongest person I know. Will you?" Tears shone in Karga's eyes, catching the starlight. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." They sealed the promise with a kiss, and Ryder felt joy so intense it was almost painful. Tomorrow they would figure out the details, how to make their union official in their own eyes if not the world's. Tonight, he just held her and felt complete. But their happiness was interrupted once again by trouble. A week after their private engagement, Ryder went into town alone to purchase supplies. Karga had wanted to come, but Ryder convinced her to stay home and tend the farm. He didn't want to admit it, but he was still nervous about how some people might react to her presence. He was loading his purchases into the wagon when he overheard a conversation in the shop that made his blood run cold. "Heard Pollux has hired some mercenaries." one man was saying. Says he's going to take what's owed to him one way or another. Heard he's planning to raid Zimmerman's farm, another replied. Going to take that orc back, sell her elsewhere. Figure he's got the right since he was the one who owned her first. That's not legal, the first man protested. Legal doesn't matter much out here in the borderlands, does it? Who's going to stop him? Ryder didn't wait to hear more. He threw the last of his supplies into the wagon and drove the horses hard back toward the farm, his mind racing. If Pollux was planning a raid, they needed to be ready. Needed to prepare. He arrived home to find Karga in the vegetable garden, and the words spilled out of him in a rush. Karga listened with a grim expression, her jaw tight. When? She asked when he finished. I don't know. Could be tonight, could be next week, but we need to be ready. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Ryder gathered his father's old weapons from the attic, a sword that was more decorative than functional, and a bow with a quiver of arrows. Karga made a spear from a long pole and a knife, and fashioned a shield from wood and leather. They moved the horses to the back pasture where they could run if needed, and secured all the valuables in a hidden cellar under the cabin floor. Night fell, and they waited, taking turns on watch. The first night passed without incident, the second as well. By the third night, Ryder was starting to think maybe they had been wrong, maybe Pollux had changed his mind. Then, in the darkest part of the night, Karga shook him awake. They are coming, she whispered. I heard horses. Ryder was up instantly, grabbing his bow. They took up positions. Ryder in the loft window where he had a good view of the approach, Karga by the door with her spear and shield. Ryder's heart hammered in his chest as he watched dark figures approaching on horseback, at least 8 men, maybe more. They stopped at the edge of the property, and Pollux's voice rang out. Zimmerman, I know you're in there. Send out the orc and we'll leave peacefully. Otherwise, we're coming in to take her. Go to hell, Pollux, Ryder shouted back. She's not going anywhere, have it your way, Pollux called. Men, take the house. The mercenaries charged forward, and Ryder drew his bow. The first arrow took one man in the shoulder, sending him tumbling from his horse. The second missed, but the third caught another mercenary in the leg. But there were too many of them, and they reached the cabin before Ryder could knock another arrow. The door crashed open, and Karga met them with her spear, fighting with the skill and ferocity of a trained warrior. She took down the first man with a strike to the chest, pushed back the second with her shield. But more were coming, and Ryder scrambled down from the loft, drawing his father's sword. The fight was chaos, cramped and brutal in the small space of the cabin. Ryder fought with desperate energy, his sword clashing against the mercenaries' weapons, his arm already aching from the impact. Karga was a whirlwind beside him, her spear striking with deadly precision, but they were outnumbered and being pushed back. Then, miraculously, new voices joined the fray. The door burst open again, and Thomas Garrett rushed in, followed by 3 other men from neighboring farms. They fell on the mercenaries from behind, and the tide of the battle shifted. Thought you could use some help. Thomas shouted, his own sword flashing. Together they drove the mercenaries back. Several fled, others fell wounded. In the chaos, Ryder lost track of Pollux until he heard Karga cry out. He turned to see the merchant holding a knife to Karga's throat, having grabbed her from behind while she was engaged with another attacker. Everyone stop, Pollux commanded, and the fighting paused. Drop your weapons or the orc dies. Ryder's sword fell from nerveless fingers, his eyes locked on the blade pressed against Karga's green skin. Don't, he begged. Please, Pollux, don't do this. Should have sold her when you had the chance, Pollux snarled. Now I'm going to take her anyway, and you're going to watch. But Pollux had made a critical mistake. He had underestimated Karga, assumed that because he had a knife to her throat she was helpless. Karga suddenly went limp, her full weight dropping, and Palak stumbled. In that instant, Karga twisted, grabbed his wrist and wrenched the knife away. She drove her elbow into his stomach and he went down gasping. Karga stood over him, the knife in her hand now, breathing hard. For a long moment, Ryder thought she might kill him. The law of the borderlands would probably support her right to do so. But then she tossed the knife aside and stepped back. "I will not kill you," she said. "But if you ever come near us again, if you ever threaten Ryder or our home, I will not show mercy a second time. Do you understand me?" Palak nodded frantically, still gasping for breath. "Get out," Ryder said, his voice shaking. "Take your men and get out. And if I hear you're dealing in slaves again, if I hear you've hurt anyone else, I'll make sure everyone in the borderlands knows what kind of man you are." Palak and his remaining mercenaries fled into the night, leaving behind their wounded. Thomas helped Ryder secure the injured men while Karga checked the cabin for damage. The fight had wrecked much of the interior, furniture broken, dishes shattered, but the structure was sound. When things had calmed down, Thomas turned to Ryder with an expression of deep respect. "You two fought well," he said, "like a real partnership, like you've been fighting together for years." "We have each other's backs," Ryder said, looking at Karga with all the love in his heart. "Always." "About that," Thomas said, looking a bit uncomfortable. "Sarah and we've been talking, about you too, about how you clearly care for each other, and we want you to know we support you. Whatever you decide to do, whatever kind of life you want to build together, we're on your side. Others are too, we'll stand with you." The words hit Ryder like a physical force, unexpected and deeply moving. "Thank you," he managed. "That means more than you know." "You saved my son," Thomas said simply. "Both of you, that's not something a man forgets." "Now, I brought the priest from town with me. He's waiting outside. Said he was willing to perform a marriage ceremony if you two were interested. Figured you might want to make things official." Ryder turned to Karga, saw the hope and joy shining in her amber eyes. "What do you say?" he asked. "Want to get married right now in the middle of the night in our wrecked cabin?" Karga laughed, the sound bright and free. "Yes," she said. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The ceremony was simple and beautiful. The priest, a kind older man named Father Benedict, spoke words of commitment and love while Ryder and Karga stood before him, hands clasped, surrounded by Thomas and the other men who had come to their aid. Sarah arrived partway through, having heard the commotion, and stood beaming with tears running down her face. "By the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," Father Benedict said, his voice warm. "You may kiss your bride." Ryder pulled Karga down and kissed her with everything he had, feeling her smile against his lips. Around them, their small congregation cheered, and Ryder felt his heart might burst from happiness. They were married. He and Karga were married. Against all odds, despite everything the world had thrown at them, they were married. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Word of their marriage spread through the region, and while not everyone approved, enough people did to make a difference. Slowly, gradually, Ryder and Karga became part of the community in a way Ryder had never been on his own. People stopped by to visit, to share meals, to ask Karga's advice on matters of security and defense, having seen her prowess in battle. Some of the younger children, Jacob Garrett among them, visited regularly to hear Karga's stories about orc culture and warrior training. Harvest came, and it was the best Ryder's farm had ever produced. He and Karga worked from dawn to dusk bringing in the wheat, and when they finally finished stacking the last sheaf in the barn, Ryder grabbed Karga around the waist and spun her in a circle, both of them laughing with exhaustion and joy. "We did it," he said. "We really did it." We did, Karga agreed, kissing his nose. Together. Together, Ryder echoed, and the word felt like a promise, like a future. That night, as they lay in the loft, Karga now sharing Ryder's bed permanently, she rested her hand on her stomach with a thoughtful expression. Ryder, she said quietly, I think I may be pregnant. Ryder's heart stopped, then started again at triple speed. What, really? Are you sure? Not completely, Karga admitted. But I have missed my monthly bleeding and I feel different, changed. I think perhaps we are going to have a child. A child, their child, half human, half orc, a living symbol of their love and everything they had built together. Ryder felt tears spring to his eyes and didn't try to hide them. That's incredible, he whispered, pulling Karga close. That's the best news I've ever heard. You are happy? Karga asked, sounding uncertain. Even though the child will be half orc, even though it may face prejudice, I'm thrilled, Ryder said firmly. And yes, our child may face challenges, but they'll also have us. They'll have a mother who is the strongest, bravest person I know, and they'll have a community that's learning to look past differences. Things are changing, Karga. Slowly, maybe, but they're changing. By the time our child is grown, maybe the world will be different. I hope so, Karga said softly. I hope our child never knows the pain of exile, the horror of slavery. I hope they know only love and acceptance. They will, Ryder promised. We'll make sure of it. As autumn deepened into winter, Karga's pregnancy became more obvious. Her belly swelled with their growing child, and Ryder found himself constantly amazed by the miracle of it. He would rest his hand on her stomach and feel their baby move, small flutters that grew stronger as the months passed. Sarah Garrett visited often, bringing advice and supplies, having raised 2 children of her own. Other women in the area, perhaps encouraged by Sarah's acceptance, began to stop by as well, and Karga found herself with a circle of friends, something she had never had before. Winter was hard, as winters in the borderlands always were, but Ryder and Karga faced it together. They had plenty of food stored from their bountiful harvest, and the cabin was warm and snug against the cold. Ryder spent the long winter evenings reading to Karga from his books, teaching her to read the words herself. She learned quickly, as she did everything, and soon she was reading to him in turn, her accented voice turning the simple stories into something magical. Spring came again, bringing with it new life to the land and to their family. Karga went into labor on a warm April morning, and Ryder sent Thomas racing into town for the midwife, while he stayed by Karga's side, holding her hand through the contractions. Sarah arrived before the midwife, bringing experience and calm competence that steadied them both. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Ryder feared they would lose Karga, lose the baby, lose everything they had built. But Karga was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known, and when the sun was setting and painting the cabin in gold, their child entered the world with a lusty cry. "A daughter," Sarah announced, placing the squirming, wailing infant in Karga's arms. "You have a beautiful daughter." Ryder looked down at his child and felt his heart expand to accommodate this new, overwhelming love. She was perfect, with Karga's green-tinged skin and his own dark hair, tiny tusks barely visible in her small mouth. She had her mother's amber eyes and her father's nose, a perfect blend of both her parents. "Hello, little one," Karga whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, my daughter, my precious girl." "What should we name her?" Ryder asked, unable to look away from his daughter's face. Karga thought for a moment. "Hope," she said. "I want to name her Hope because she is our hope for the future, our hope for a better world." "Hope Zimmerman," Ryder said, testing the name. "I love it. It's perfect." They named her Hope, and she was their joy, their future, their everything. She grew strong and healthy, a happy baby who laughed easily and rarely cried. The neighbors welcomed her with gifts and blessings, and young Jacob Garrett appointed himself her protector, visiting regularly to make sure his baby sister was doing well. As hope grew, so did the acceptance in the region. More orcs, hearing about Ryder and Karga's story, began to settle in the borderlands, seeking their own chances at peaceful lives. Some faced hostility, but others found welcome, and slowly the region became known as a place where humans and orcs could coexist. It wasn't perfect, and there were still incidents of prejudice and violence, but it was better. It was progress. Ryder expanded the farm, building a larger house with more rooms for their growing family. Karga was pregnant again by the time Hope was 2, and this time it was a boy they named Thomas, after the man who had stood with them in their darkest hour. Then came another daughter, Margaret, named for the shopkeeper who had been one of the first to welcome Karga. The years passed in a blur of work and love and laughter. The farm prospered, and Ryder and Karga's children grew strong and confident, secure in the love of their parents and the acceptance of their community. Hope grew into a serious, thoughtful child with her mother's strength and her father's compassion. Thomas was rambunctious and cheerful, always getting into mischief. Little Margaret was quiet and curious, constantly asking questions about everything she saw. Ryder watched his children play in the fields he had worked all his life and felt a contentment so deep, it was almost painful. This was what he had wanted, what he had dreamed of during those lonely years after his father's death. A family, a home filled with love and laughter, a partner who understood him completely and loved him anyway. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ryder and Karga stood together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The children were inside with Sarah Garrett, who had volunteered to watch them for the evening, and for once Ryder and Karga had time alone together. "Can you believe it's been 10 years?" Ryder asked, his arm around Karga's waist. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Karga said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes it feels like forever, like I cannot remember a time when you were not part of my life." "Best card game I ever played," Ryder said with a grin. Karga laughed. "You did not want to play." "I know. Thank God Marcus made me. Otherwise I never would have met you, never would have had this life. It's funny how the things we don't want to do sometimes turn out to be the most important." "Fate," Karga said softly. "Perhaps it was always meant to be, you and me against the world." "Not against the world anymore," Ryder corrected. "With the world, or at least with enough of it to matter." "True," Karga agreed. "We have been blessed with good neighbors and good friends. Our children will grow up knowing acceptance, knowing love. It is more than I ever dreamed possible." "I love you," Ryder said, turning to face her fully. 10 years later, 3 children later, I love you more than I did on our wedding day. More than I thought it was possible to love another person." "And I love you," Karga replied, her amber eyes shining with emotion. "You saw me when I was property, when I was nothing, and you treated me with dignity and kindness. You gave me a home, a family, a reason to hope. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything too," Ryder said. "You made me less lonely. You made my life full. You made me a father and a husband and a better man than I ever would have been on my own." They kissed as the sun set, and Ryder felt the same spark he had felt the first time he kissed her, the same sense of rightness in coming home. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever prejudices they still had to face, they would face them together. As partners, as equals. As lovers who had built something beautiful out of the ashes of injustice and loneliness. Inside the house, their children's laughter rang out, bright and pure. Tomorrow there would be work to do, fields to tend, lessons to teach. But tonight, Ryder held his wife and felt nothing but gratitude for the card game he hadn't wanted to play. for the woman who had told him he was stuck with her, for the life they had built together against all odds. The stars came out one by one, and Ryder thought about the night they had lain in the wheat field and made love under that same sky. He thought about all the moments between then and now, the challenges overcome, the joys shared, the family created. And he knew with absolute certainty that he was the luckiest man alive. "Come on," Karga said, tugging his hand. "Let us go check on the children before they destroy Sarah's patience completely." Ryder laughed and followed her inside into the warm glow of lamplight and the chaos of family life. Hope ran to him immediately, demanding to be picked up, and he swung her into his arms while Thomas and Margaret chattered about their evening adventures. Karga stood beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder, and Sarah smiled at them with the contentment of someone who had watched a good thing grow and flourish. This was home. This was family. This was everything they had fought for, everything they had built together. And as Ryder looked around at the people he loved most in the world, he knew that no matter what tomorrow brought, they would face it together. Because that was what family did. That was what love meant. He had one Karga in a card game he hadn't wanted to play, and she had told him he was stuck with her. And thank God he was. Thank God for every moment, every challenge, every joy. Thank God for the life they had built, the children they had raised, the love they shared. Ryder Zimmerman had always thought his life would be small, limited to the boundaries of his farm and the endless cycle of planting and harvest. But Karga had shown him that life could be so much more, that love could cross boundaries that seemed impossible. That family could be found in the most unexpected places. That home wasn't a place but a person, a feeling, a choice made every day to stand by the one you loved no matter what the world threw at you. And as he looked at his wife, his children, his friends, he knew he would make that choice every day for the rest of his life. Because Karga was right. He was stuck with her now, and he wouldn't have it any other way.